All right, why don't we, we'll call the meeting to order. It is 4 o'clock and all members are present either in person or virtually. Why don't we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance.
Flag, United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Are there any comments from the public? I don't see any virtual attendees. So is there anybody in the room besides either the concern about the lighthouse? Is there anybody else in the room that seeks?
Mr. Keeney will recognize Mr. Keeney.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment about the lighthouse?
Yep, sure. Frank Keeney will make a comment about the lighthouse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to the Board of Selectmen for the town of Old Saybrook. I'm Frank Keeney, and my wife Beverly and I live at 41 Petticock Avenue. The Borough of Norwich application to acquire the Lynn Point Lighthouse has overwhelming support in our community, and we are ready, willing, and able to take on the challenges to rehabilitate and preserve this historic landmark. We're here to urge you to vote in favor of the proposal before you today and endorse Fenwick's application to acquire the Lynn Point Lighthouse. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on. Matt or Scott, I know, Scott, you may have some news over at the monuments at the high school. I'll let you.
Yep, I'm ecstatic to share that Mike Cameron from Cameron Landscaping Company here in Old Saybrook, who donated his time and labor, and they have placed the 200 bricks that we sold as fundraising bricks, and they put stone on either side of it. We're calling it Monument Way, and it absolutely is monumental. The work that they did and the outcome is truly impressive. And on Thursday morning of Thanksgiving, you had more than 80 people at the turf field playing in some type of alumni soccer games. It was amazing the number of people that stopped by and made real positive comments that, you know, after 40 years, we really accomplished something major. And I'm pleased and proud to have been a part of it and like the fact that Old Saybrook does some great things often and ongoingly.
Scott, is it done?
We still have the recognition plaque to erect, and that's actually to be, you know, we have to get that. We have to become in receipt of that. We haven't done that yet. We haven't ordered that. And then there are 2 cap pieces that will have to go on to the big pillars. And then finally, there's paving work, which at this time of the year, I believe we can't do that until the first paving moment in the spring. But we're in the queue.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's mostly done. So I want to thank you very much. The Monument Way that you're describing goes back to the fundraising for the lights, which, as we know, a regulatory process that we went through to get the lights over there, and the fundraising that went into it was Herculean, to say the least, and incredibly impressive. Showed the desire that the community had for recreational playing field lights. And Scott, I mean, you moved and shaked it. I mean, that's all I can say is you made it happen. You really did. And I know there were other people, including new member of the Board of Finance, Megan Brady, had a lot to do with it too, and a whole host of other people. So I'm going to back up. Scott, did you have anything else?
I do not really, other than we had that big event this weekend, and I know we'll talk about that.
Oh yeah, right. We have the Starlight Festival. I'm just gonna back up 1 minute. Looks like I know Doobie McDowell is a guest of the hearing right now, And Doobie, if you have any comment that you would like to make, you may raise your hand and you can be recognized. We started right on time. Sometimes people end up joining a little late. Frank Keeney made a comment. If you had any comment, you're more than welcome to raise your hand and you can be recognized. If not, we will continue to proceed with the agenda. Why don't we just say that right now? There's the Starlight Festival this weekend, which is, I think, our third year running doing this, bigger and better than ever. Jennifer Donahue has put a heck of a lot of work into this, with Brett Elliott, with the Chamber, and a few other folks. I don't know if you've seen the town green. It already looks spectacular. It looks really beautiful. Jennifer has taken on a heck of a lot, and it's not just decorating, it's a lot more than that. Putting together a festival like we had in the summer and like we're having in the winter, somebody has to take it on, and there's a lot of, hello? Oh, I thought I heard.
That's the hallway.
There's a lot of other people who are involved in that, but it very much revolves around economic development. And you're going to hear more from Jennifer during the budget season, because she is doing a lot. So I don't know if there's anything else anybody wanted. I do have a couple comments. Matt, do you have anything?
Just one, I think, a recognition to the high school boys soccer team on their 5th straight state championship, which is an incredible achievement for them and the program.
That is just incredible. I mean, you can't make that stuff up 5 years in a row, and it's just phenomenal. They're a dominant program, and very impressive. So thanks for bringing that up. Just a quick couple things. Like I said, I'm at the CCM convention today, but one other huge, I don't know how huge a piece of news is, but it's a pretty big piece of news. As you know, the library is looking to do an expansion project, not expanding the footprint, but doing a renovation of the library to make it a more modern library, make it, remodel it to the way people use it currently and will use it in the future. We hired an architectural firm to do some conceptual drawings. The whole idea all along was to apply to the state of Connecticut for a grant. The state of Connecticut gives library grants every year up to $2 million. And we applied for, and last night we're notified that we received $2 million, which is unbelievable. I mean, so the library also has, from when they originally built the library, the Tucker Fund. So that has over $1 million in it. So when you start saying that you're $3 million out of 5 million towards your goal, it's pretty impressive. And I would submit, we have 3 years to execute on this, not finish the project, but to accept the grant and basically, I think, get under construction. I received it at 5:30 last night, so I haven't actually looked at the details. But my hope would be that we could raise some additional funds, and between that and maybe a steep grant or another grant, and some monies that we have in our capital non-recurring account, not have to bond for this. We're 3 million out of 5 million there, and I'm just hoping, I'm gonna see if there's a way to make it happen over the course of the next 2 years, that the funding is in place and that we can proceed with this project. But congratulations to Director Amanda Brower and her staff and the architectural firm that helped submit the grant. I did not expect that we would receive $2 million. I truly didn't. So that's a big, big win for the town. Hearing no further comments, I don't want to cut anybody off. Anything further? Nope. Okay. Approval of the minutes, Board of Selectmen meeting, November 14, 2023. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any comments, questions, revisions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. All right, let me just Make a note here. All right. Business before the board. The first thing I want to do, so I don't forget, is add to the agenda. I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda a call of a special town meeting for next Tuesday evening. So I'd like to just get that on the agenda, and then I'll talk to why I'm doing it, why I'm proposing to do it anyway. So I'll make that motion to add it to the agenda.
Second.
Seconded by Matt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. So it's on the agenda, and basically the call, these are items that the Board of Finance approved last Tuesday. Three of them are ARPA grants to the Ambulance Association, to Little League, and to do a resiliency project in Great Hammock Beach, providing $25,000 of matching funds. And then the fourth item on there is we received a $500,000 urban action grant to complete phase 2 of the Main Street Connection Park. And we need about another $100,000 to accommodate the low bidder. That has been awarded. We've gone through the state. They're good with everything we've supplied. We're going to probably get this week authority to award that to the low bidder. And the low bidder wants to do this project. This is their first project in the spring. So very optimistic we can get it done. So I'd like to just get these items out of the way before we head into the holidays, and then scheduling meetings is going to be a lot harder. And so with the permission of this board, I'd like to make a motion. Are there any questions about the items on the agenda? Yeah, I mean, very straightforward. Scott, do you have any questions? I can't see you right now.
I'm fine. I just had to go open the door.
Yep. All right. So I'll move to approve the call of the special town meeting. It's going to be right before the Board of Finance next Tuesday.
Second.
Scott, you seconded it?
Yes.
Great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Just to get that done quickly. All right, let's just quickly do some things. Board of Selectmen schedule 2024. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the schedule? Oh, Matt, can't hear you.
Huh. Sorry about that. Is it possible that we move the 8 o'clock meeting to the evening?
Where are we here?
Trying to find that schedule.
Which one? You mean the first meeting of the month?
Yeah.
And why?
I mean, so I received some feedback from people that it was difficult for the public to be able to attend a meeting that was at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so wanted to bring that up.
Okay. Well, what I prefer to do then, if you don't mind, I'd still prefer to have a day meeting. Why don't we, what I prefer to do is maybe move the second meeting of the month. Maybe we can move that to 6.
Yep, that would work.
And get the room. Georgianne's going to kill me if I don't. I was supposed to approve this at the last meeting. I'll tell you what. Why don't we do that? Why don't we say 6 o'clock? Why don't we make that motion to change the second meeting? Is that okay for you, Scott?
That's fine.
And I like to be able to accommodate requests, obviously, so we don't have to split the board, but 6 p.m. And I'll verify with Georgianne that is sufficient, or that she can get a room from, let's say 6 to 7 anyway. If not, we will revisit this. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So, Matt, Matt, you're gonna make a motion to amend the meeting schedule for 2024. So that the fourth Tuesday of each month, the meeting will be at 6 p.m. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a motion. I'll second it. So what we will have then is the second Tuesday of the month, 8:30, the fourth Tuesday at 6 p.m.
That's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you both.
Yep, moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. And the holiday schedule, this is basically union business. These are federal and state recognized holidays. So I'm gonna move the holiday schedule. Is there a second?
Second.
Any question on the holiday schedule? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Get some things in order here. Somehow. All right. Oh, just quickly on tax refunds. So our new tax collector brought this to my attention, that there is a statute. So for years, under Barry Maynard, he would, when he determined that there was an overpayment, he would refund, and we would approve it. I would approve it in the list of payables when he would do it. And sometimes it's over the course of a couple of weeks that he issues payments. I never really thought twice about it because I assume the tax collector understands when someone has overpaid, and frequently it's $2, it's $20, it's rarely $10,000. They're usually relatively small amounts. I think you can see that sometimes in the hundreds. Anyway, so Mark Delmonico recently brought this to my attention that the collector shall, and this is state Connecticut General Statute 12-129, the tax collector shall, after examination of such application for a refund, refer the recommendations thereon to the Board of Selectmen in a town or to the corresponding authority, and shall certify to the amount of the refund to which the applicant is entitled. If there's another debt, that person doesn't get the rebate, obviously, it gets applied. But upon receipt of such application from the tax collector, the selectman or such other authority shall draw an order upon the treasurer in favor of such applicant. So it should be brought to the Board of Selectmen, is basically the way Mark is interpreting the statute. So I'm fine with it. He has determined these refunds are due. So that's why it's before you, and you'll probably see a collection of this maybe maybe 3 or 4 meetings a year. You're going to get a collection of tax refunds. And as you can see, they range from $15 to $600 on this one or so. We can discuss this in a second. I'm going to move that we approve the tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector, Mark Delmonico. Is there a second?
Second.
So Mark simply thinks this is a better process pursuant to state statute. And there's no harm in doing this. Normally, it just would be done. This just is a more, I guess, transparent process according to the tax collector. Matt, any question with that?
No, I mean, it seems it's just an extra check and balance as well, that
It is.
there's not any back taxes due on somebody if there's an amount that really stands out.
Yeah, and if you want to look it up yourself, like I said, Connecticut General Statute 12-129. Okay. So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, let's just do one more thing with the board's consent. We're gonna switch to the last item on the agenda, which is reappointment of alternate member Dennis Tullamary to a 2-year term on the planning commission. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right, so now let's turn to item D, which is the lighthouse. So I'm gonna let New Brainerd, I know I believe Susan Tumulovich.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Is also there. So what I would prefer is anybody who's gonna speak, why don't you, the table is not crowded, so maybe come up to the table, and that might allow Matt and myself to be able to hear you a little bit better.
Feel free to come right up.
So Susan, I'm gonna have you present first. Is that okay?
Sure, that's fine.
And make sure you speak clearly and sitting at the table. So I appreciate that. Go ahead. And one thing, Susan, you should know is that the Board of Selectmen does have what you sent yesterday, which is the environmental questionnaire for the Lynn Point Lighthouse. That is in the possession of the Board of Selectmen. I assume they've reviewed it.
Great. Excellent.
Pardon?
I'm glad you have it.
Okay.
I have another document I'm happy to give you. Are you the only board member here?
I'm the only one present physically.
All right, I know you're all here, so my presentation more or less will be reading this because you've all received what else I presented, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a draft of the executive summary. I was here a little early with my friends from Fenwick, and we had a chat, and I do understand and very, very much appreciate their love of the lighthouse. And before I get started, let me say thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Susan Tamulevich from the New London Maritime Society. And we are also putting in a proposal to take on Lynn Point Lighthouse. So I love this, and I've spoken with the warden a couple times, and we're happy to help if we can, you know, if they certainly will trump us with the financial statements. I will say that. But the New London Maritime Society has a lot of heart. And Fenwick is a beautiful community of, is it 90 houses? And I know you love the lighthouse, but so does Old Saybrook. It's a little bigger, and it's important. Well, I'll read my executive summary. That might be less rambling than my just talking. Building a stewardship of local lighthouses. 221 years ago, a beacon was established on the west bank of the mouth of the Connecticut River to guide mariners through the dangerous sands and shoals of Long Island Sound. 36 years on, that wooden structure was replaced and enlarged. Lynn Point Lighthouse's bright, steady beam has ever since guided merchant shipbuilders and now recreational boaters safely through the channel, in and out of the river. Lynn Point Light, along with Little Bell, Ledge, New London Harbor, Race Rock Lighthouse, create a beacon of a pathway of beacons along Long Island Sound, leading out into the Atlantic. They're part of the strong maritime heritage of Eastern Connecticut. And I say that at the beginning because, you know, that lighthouse was built when all those lands were Lynn Farms. And I mentioned, you know, the dates because I just saw today at the Custom House, we have the documents from the customs inspector who oversaw the construction of Lynn Point Lighthouse, who did the quarterly reports. The lighthouses were important for transportation, commerce in those days, everything was by water. Long Island Sound and your magnificent Connecticut River. So many, many people care about that lighthouse. And I know you know that, but I'm just making the point why it's not unreasonable for the Maritime Society to see this also as part of our purview. The New London Maritime Society is a nonprofit corporation founded 40 years ago with a community preservation movement to acquire and preserve the 1833 New London Custom House, which we've successfully transformed into the Custom House Maritime Museum. This preservation-minded, teaching-oriented community museum houses artifacts and documents pertaining to the region and its rich nautical history. The historic U.S. Custom House is solidly on Bank Street, its windows facing the maritime traffic of the Thames River. Our mission is to preserve and promote the maritime history of New London, its people, its port, the harbor, the Thames River, and Long Island Sound through exhibitions, educational programs, and in collaboration with other institutions. And to name the 4 bodies that embody this maritime heritage, we own 3 lighthouses acquired all while I've been there through the National Lighthouse Preservation Act, through this same excruciating process we're going through, filling out these very long personal applications. Let's see, we started in 2010, 2014 with Race Rock out in Race, Ledge Light in 2015, as I said, all through the NHLPA. With the stewardship of Lynn Point Lighthouse, in addition to the 3, we will secure a strong local stewardship for the beacons along the Connecticut coast. New London's Custom House ties to Lynn Point go back almost 200 years when federal customs agents posted at our very customs building directed the efforts to erect the lighthouses. The letter I told you about today, 1838, Inglesby Proctor, the inspector, was writing about the type of stone, the conditions of the old lighthouse, what they needed to construct to make the new lighthouse. And they didn't do that even for Old Saybrook. They were doing that for all the traffic that comes through Long Island Sound going to out to the Atlantic, and also coming down that very, very tricky Connecticut River with the bar and the shoal, Cornfield Point Shoal. You know, it's a difficult area to navigate. Let's see. Over the past 12 years and working at a regional level, our larger effort has been to develop New London's claim as New Long Island Sound's lighthouse hub. This destination will help preserve the area's lighthouses, educate visitors about local maritime heritage and stewardship, and support the work of our museum and other maritime heritage organizations, as well as boosting regional tourism. Our annual Sentinels on the Sound Lighthouse Weekend, boat tour, successful local history and landmarks enrichment program, which we've run without a fee in the New London Public Schools for 15 years, and the permanent lighthouse exhibition at the Custom House are all parts of this effort. We also work across state boundaries. For several years, we've worked with the Fishers Island School and also the Islands Ferguson Museum, which is a big supporter of what we do, and we have a good partnership. So please come to the Custom House, see what we've done to preserve the 3 lighthouses, including our restoration of Harbor Light. We did the restoration. We've done our landscaping. It's quite beautiful right now. Architectural preservation studies, our education program in the New London Public School. And we have succeeded. We battled a 4-year lawsuit to maintain the right for the public to have access to the lighthouses which they own. That was no picnic, believe me. 2014 through April of 2019. I mentioned that the Custom House is the only Connecticut site on the National Park Service Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. We also are on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Let's see. Acquiring the Lynn Point Lighthouse would represent a major step in preserving a significant piece of Long Island Sound's seafaring history, just as saving New London Harbor Light did 12 years ago, and saving the Custom House did 28 years before that. The Board of Selectmen feels it's important that the Lynn Point Lighthouse remain in the public domain under direction of the community, and that it always be considered part of the nautical fabric of the region. This document explains how we do, this work and how we've done it for 3 lighthouses. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions from the board? And I want to be clear with Scott and Matt. This was a late request from the New London Maritime Society to be on the agenda to discuss this. In fact, it was yesterday. So the reason that you see the agenda the way it's written, with his endorsement of Fenwick's application, is not by any means to favor any particular group. I just want to be clear on that. The request from New London Maritime Society was like yesterday, and I didn't change the agenda. So as a courtesy, of course, because they're an interested party or want to be an interested party, I thought we'd put Susan and the New London Maritime Society on. So are there any questions from Matt or Scott? I have a few.
Well, I have a few questions. If you want me to start, or you want to go? Or what?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Access is one of these issues, and you talk about perhaps bringing in boat access. Okay, so what's the process for bringing a boat into that area? Have you done it in any of the other 3 lighthouses in the past? And is that a long permitted process? Is it a reality? Is it something with the high waters there coming up and down, up and down? Do you have enough space? Is it something that is actually feasible in reality?
Yeah, access is an issue, and that's something, I spoke with Mr. Shalma yesterday. It's the access that crosses property that is, kind of a stumbling block. So we own 2 offshore lighthouses, and we bring people to them, especially to Ledge Lighthouse, by boat. I think we brought 261 people this summer to visit Ledge Lighthouse. It's a little more expensive, which I don't love, but we've been able to get grants the past 2 years from the New London Water Authority. So whereas for an adult to take the boat and go to Ledge Lighthouse, a long trip, would be $50. If you're a New London resident, we're able to provide that access for you and your children for $5. Well, I love that, and people love that too. It feeds into our program in the New London schools, which, as I said, we've done for 15 years, where we teach about all the landmarks, and as much as we can, we provide field trips across the entire school year, where we bring all those 3rd grade classes 2 at a time to visit the different historic sites and learn about them from the people who run them. But we can't take them out to the lighthouse. That's not feasible at that time of year. So this is something we picked up so that, the owners of the lighthouse, the public of the United States who built them and who've maintained them all these years and who paid for the Coast Guard, they have access. So it's not so crazy. I will say at a place like Faulkner's Island, working with the Fish and Wildlife Service, they brought in a landing craft at Ledge Lighthouse. We have a couple of boards they tie up to, and you just leap on top of the platform, and people seem to manage that. At Race Rock, it is mighty tricky, and we do a very limited number of tours, but we have spent a lot of time studying the problem of getting to these lighthouses. And we have a pretty wide network of people. On our board are people like Nick Korstad, who's quite famous as owning quite a few lighthouses. He's sort of like the shining person in this country for running. He ran the lighthouse up at Fall River, and now he runs a bed and breakfast in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. But he owns about 5 different lighthouses and is working very much with the Maine Lighthouse Association. What else can I say about landing? So we know about landing. It's not our preferred way to go, since it's an onshore lighthouse. It seems a little bit unnecessarily expensive, but it makes for a bit more of an adventure, I suppose, for our visitors. So that could be a plus. Does that answer?
Yeah, Susan, just with regard to that, obviously this is a tidal area. Does your plan for water landings involve building a dock?
No. We have two. We could put in a floating dock on the beach. We own a portion of the beach there. We would. It goes with the lighthouse, and it's pre-existing non-conforming with the Coast Guard and Lighthouse Service use. And we have pictures. Look, you got the boat right there in your picture on the wall. We've already spoken with DEEP. There'd be no problem with a permit. If we wanted to do a dock, who wants a dock? We don't want a dock. What we might do is something like a couple of piers along the outside of the seawall and a ladder, which would be similar to the we land at Race Rock, straight up the ladder from the edge of the boat. Not ideal. There are other ways to do tours, though. Since 2011, the Maritime Society has done sort of drive-by tours, which have been taken over in New London by Cross Sound Ferry, alas. But we used to do 5 tours a day, going out in a small boat, just 6 people, 6 passengers, going by the lighthouses. And with Lynn Point, there's so many interesting, historic, and different than New London, really different than where we're used to working. Ways to interpret the lighthouse service, all of that. It would be, frankly, for me, I think it would be almost more fun to do the by water tours where you don't make people fun, because there are always these older people who it's on their bucket list and you think they're going to kill themselves. So it's tricky. Everything is tricky, but by land is pretty good.
Yeah. So Susan, and with regard to a water landing, if you were able to do that, is the entire property, would you envision people having to climb over the seawall, or is there an access?
It would be over the seawall. It would be either up the beach, floating dock, landing vehicle. That's not going to go over.
And then climbing over the seawall. Okay.
Or climbing over the seawall, and we would make some sort of provision for that, so that it was not what do you call it? Didn't have to be a ninja to do it.
And I don't think it's a private conversation because I was CC'd on it. So my understanding is that there's land access is limited. Number one, it's limited because, as you know, you have to cross over 2 pieces of private property to get to the lighthouse. And number 2, it's limited by virtue of the language of the easement, which discusses the purposes why someone can use the easement, which is for the light fixture and the light keeper, essentially.
The light, the house, and the keeper. And who is the keeper? There was no Coast Guard at that time. Is the keeper the owner? Maybe the Coast Guard or the interlopers. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So that is a possible limiting factor for land. Yeah. And my understanding is that you don't have to comment on it, but that you've had conversations with at least one of those landowners. And
Yeah, Mr. Sherman yesterday, yes, he called me.
and he was, and he, I do want to share, like, I mean, I guess you asked for perhaps cooperation on his part, and I guess he wasn't interested.
All right.
Okay.
But he did say that I had spoken with Newt,
Yep.
and that we were going to work together regardless. And that you know, whatever team wins, as long as the lighthouse is preserved, you know, we're not into acquisition.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, these are two applicants that we know of. And we've had Newt Brainerd, myself, members of the Historical Society, the Land Trust, and the Connecticut Gateway Commission. We've had probably 6, 7 meetings, Newt, would you say?
Yep.
Where we have discussed a variety of topics about the lighthouse and how best to acquire it, preserve it, and provide some public access. I think the message that I'm getting, and we'll hear from Newt Brainerd next, is no matter what, access is going to be limited. Public access is going to be limited. But that's what it sounds like to me, even in the programmatic features that were submitted in the New London Maritime Society application. So, Ms. Tamulovich, is there anything else you wanted to say before I turn the floor over to Mr. Brainerd? And Matt or Scott also. Yes, I'm sorry. So Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question around the Maritime Society's financial resources to continue to maintain the property once it's acquired. How would you go about doing that?
I understand, and that's a concern for all of us, but the way the Maritime Society works, it was founded by local people who cared about the Custom House building, which was about to be sold by the GSA, and the rumor was it was going to be a French restaurant. Not a bad thing, but you know, they wanted to preserve it. And whenever push comes to shove, and we need something, we ask for the money and we get it. Now, for instance, New London Harbor Light. I was very new at the museum when that was awarded to the Maritime Society. And what do you do? And that's in New London. First thing people say is, when are you going to paint it? You know, it's just like, all right, you own it. When are you going to paint it? We live down here, you know, like that.
Yeah.
We live at the West End. We don't want to look at that lighthouse. And for me, it was how many years will it take to raise this money? I had a press conference on the beach next to the lighthouse. We own part of that beach too. And within 24 hours, I got a phone call from the secretary of the Carpenters Union. She loves the lighthouse. She read about it on Patch, not even in the day, on Patch. And she got the Carpenters Union to volunteer. She got the Painters Union to volunteer. She got brand scaffolding to donate the scaffolding for 4 months. People gave $125,000 almost immediately. But I have to say, those donations were made in less than 24 hours. And the pride that people take when they contribute, when they take part, when they clean, when they do any little thing at these landmarks that they've grown up with. That's what our organization is about. It's engendering this community feeling and the feeling of stewardship. It's not having somebody, oh my God, I'm so impressed by your grant for $3 million. It's wonderful. We get grants. We do get grants, but most of our funding is through individual asks, and people who care about something give. This summer, we noticed, you know, New London Harbor Light, as I said, we did that campaign. We restored the lighthouse, we painted it, we repointed it, we did all kinds of things. We placed the wind, we did many, many, many things. And here it is, what, 7 years, 8 years later, and when are you gonna repaint it? So that was a community concern. We did a GoFundMe. We raised $4,500 to repaint the light, to wash the lighthouse. And you do it with a moat, right? You don't want the water going into Long Island Sound, using very, say, detergents, whatever it is they use. And we got it done. This year we had a similar thing. The door, the iron door from 1839, which was repainted 7 years ago, was beginning to spall on the edges and also rust. And we hadn't noticed it because we've been focusing on the landscaping. All of a sudden the door wasn't closing. So we said we have to do a campaign for this. This has to be fixed right away. The man came out who was actually, this is actually a wonderful thing about our organization, because we have a number of lighthouses, we have a number of resources that we can use interchangeably at the different lighthouses. So this man who had come out to visit Race Rock about replacing the wrought iron railing, I dragged him over to Harbor Light. He gave us an estimate. We announced it, I think, in August, and we got the 50%. They did the work. We got the second 50%, and it's all paid for. I mean, the restoration of New London Harbor Light, I would love to have gotten $1 million grant for it and been able to sleep and not have my hair go gray and all of that. But we do it in inches, and we do it with the community. And it's so gratifying, and that's almost why we do it. We're doing the preservation, but we're doing it to grow our future stewards, and a lot of people care.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If there's no further questions for Susan in the New London Maritime Society, I'm going to have Newt Brainerd give a little talk here about the lighthouse also. So welcome, Newt.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Newton Brainerd, Warden of the Borough of Fenwick. As Carl said, I have spent 6 or 7 or 8 meetings here in the town with Carl and some of your local nonprofits, including the Old Saybrook Historical Society, Gateway Commission. The Old Saybrook Land Trust has been part of those discussions as well. And, those discussions were meant to share information and try to figure out how we might best work together, whether it's one application or there are multiple applications, but ultimately how we could work together, pooling our resources and our knowledge base. So what has come of that is the borough is putting in an application by Thursday, which is the application date that we've been working on since the beginning of September. It's been a long, arduous process, and we've had a lot of good input from our potential partners, from residents in the borough, from Carl, and we're pretty excited about what we are putting forth. I'll get back to it, but a lot of what Susan said is really magnificent in terms of her and their organization's ability to harness the historical aspect that is needed and is really going to be needed, the nautical history that we are going to need, hopefully, when we acquire this property. And it's listening to you, it's just fascinating because it just rolls off your tongue, and the borough doesn't have that expertise within it. So we will be leveraging with the Old Saybrook Historical Society, and hopefully with Susan's group, one way or the other. And we've spoken numerous times about that, but I think it's a natural extension. Our plan, I'll be hopefully relatively brief here. Our plan is to acquire the lighthouse, and then to kind of jump into a few things that, because it's in the middle, on the edge, but in the middle of our community, it's been derelict for a long time. The Coast Guard spent no money over the last 20 to 25 years. So the fencing is all down. The first thing we're gonna do is secure the site, because it's tremendously dangerous, for any member of the public, as well as, there's a derelict two-family house there that has been abandoned, and so there's all sorts of fire hazards out there as well. So our plan is immediately to acquire and then secure the site. And then we'll get into the second part of it, which will be making the site safe for ultimate public access. And that will include a couple of things. That will include the preservation piece, which is the way the Park Service looks at it, which is the actual lighthouse. And then the rest of the structures and the land and everything is almost secondary to them in some ways. They are very, very focused on the actual preservation of the lighthouse. So we have put together a team of consultants from the historic preservation realm. We have an architect out of Hartford who specializes in historic preservation. Kroski Architects, who will be our on-site architecture firm to help us with the interface on design, programmatic stuff on the design side with the Park Service. We also are going to leverage the neighbor and our borough resident, Frank Siami, whose company, Siami Construction, has won multiple awards in the New York City area from the Landmarks Commission on historic preservation, as well as they have acquired a lighthouse, or Frank has acquired a lighthouse, the outer lighthouse in Old Saybrook, on a personal level, and has put that through a tremendous preservation program that has won awards as well. So we're really going to leverage that on the construction side when we're going to do some of the preservation of lighthouse that needs to be done to get it up to snuff. On the remainder of the property, in the near-ish term, we will set about demolishing the existing two-family house that is there, that is in our minds unusable. It is full of asbestos and all sorts of other nasty 1960s, 1970s building materials. So it'll be quite expensive to first remediate all of that environmental stuff out of that building, which will then allow us to demolish the building. So that will have a cost and a time constraint there. All the while, the other, I would say, large part in terms of expense is the existing wall, brownstone retaining wall that holds the site together. We have engaged Anchor, what's our consultant's name? A marine, structural marine engineer who does work for the borough, and he's done a survey of the wall. It's going to need both exterior help, and on the shore side, it's all undermined because the waves have been coming over and undermining the thing. And we have a price of at least $500,000 on that to get that done. We're also monitoring wells on site from spills that the Coast Guard has gotten themselves into over the years. So there's environmental issues in the ground themselves. So then once we get all that organized, and the site graded and put the ecological appropriate flora and fauna back onto the property, we will open it up for what we call managed public access. And I think the way I look at it, there's a double-edged sword here in terms of access, because as Carl and Susan have talked about, there's only way to get to the property by land is going over two pieces of private property that have an easement in place that in the favor of the U.S. Coast Guard for the express purpose of servicing the light. And even beyond that, the easement, according to our lawyers, does not transfer to the successors and assigns. So that there's an argument that easement actually goes away to whomever the next owner is of the lighthouse. So you go from a very limited easement in order to just manage the light to no easement potentially. So our application, I believe, will be, I'm 100% sure, will be the only one that solves the access issue, which is very delicate because in discussions with the two landowners, am having to sell them on what our public access will be so that they're comfortable with it, but not have it overburden a limited easement that they're willing to go with. If you see my, so I have a bunch of people who want more public access, but then I can't sell it to the homeowners, and the homeowners are okay with what I call managed public access, not just a public park. And so there's a very fine line that we've been able to navigate that I think has both the private folks and the public access in a place that is acceptable to our partners, the Gateway Commission, the Old Saybrook Historical Society, the Lynn Point Land Trust, and the borough at large. So our managed public access will be, kind of a lot of things Susan's talking about. It'll be school tours, and it'll be lighthouse enthusiasts, and it'll be, environmental groups that want to come see it, Old Saybrook Historic Society folks. We are not set up to actually kind of get that whole narrative going. We don't do that. So we will rely on the Old Saybrook Historical Society, groups like Susan's, if we can get them involved, to help us figure out the whole historic aspect of it. And then the tours will be on an appointment basis. It's not going to be just show up and go for a walk on the at the lighthouse. It's going to be I equate it to another public amenity that will go into the borough's sack of public amenities, which include the Old Saybrook or the Fenwick Golf Course, for instance, right? It's a public amenity, and the public is welcome. They just can't come whenever they want. They have to pay a few bucks. I mean, obviously for the school, the Old Saybrook schools and nonprofits, we won't make anybody like that pay, but citizens that want to come from Iowa to come look at the lighthouse, we're going to ask for a donation. So that's where I am.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
You've highlighted a couple expensive items.
Yeah.
Funding.
So we have the ability to fund it ourselves through, but I think by ourselves, I mean on the public side, from our reserves and tax revenues. But I think ultimately, knowing how things typically go in the borough, it will be a combination of public funds and private donations.
Okay. And even in the New London Maritime Society programmatic model, they highlighted September to May. And it does seem to me that even looking at the New London Maritime proposal with regard to public access, you wouldn't even notice it. I mean, the fact is, if you did once a month guided walking tours and annual field trips and a Christmas bird count and four tours per year for the New London Maritime Society, and I mean, you could be talking about, even in their proposal, 10 or 12 visits.
I agree.
Which is incredible. Like, I don't even think anybody in the borough of Fenwick would know what was happening.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And that in some ways, I'm trying in our application not to be that specific as, for these, to these, because I'm dealing with the abutters as well. And I want to keep it a little more open so I can kind of negotiate it with them. But I've told them that's generally described that process and that type of visitation.
Yeah. So just so the board knows, public access is a requirement of the acquisition of the process through the through the GSA.
Right.
So whoever acquires it, their feet is held to the fire on that. Public access is not defined. We need to be clear on that also. But
and speaking to the Park Service, they were asked about that, and they specifically did not define it on purpose. They say each community and each lighthouse is in a different situation, and it needs to, the public access needs to fit the landscape, both public and private landscape, meaning roads and access and all that, for each particular spot. So they understand that they don't want to overwhelm community.
I mean, in theory, in theory, I think Fenwick has an opportunity to provide more public access. And I'm not dismissive of the New London Maritime Society proposal, but more public access because you can access it by land. We're not going to send a bunch of school kids out on a boat to climb over the seawall. It's not happening. I don't think it. I shouldn't say that categorically. You know, I shared with the Board of Selectmen, just so you guys know, the Sonia Allen Singh email from November 13th, which did talk about the concerns with the easement and with the access. So they are aware of that. Any questions for the Borough Warden? Matt?
Not so much a question as a comment. I mean, I understand Newt, you know, trying to navigate the between the public access and the property owners. I do think that even though it's not defined in the application itself, the more specific that you can be, I think would be reviewed better by those that are reviewing it, because it seems that you have a more concrete plan than to leave it vague. And I just think, you know, as Carl was aiming at as well, I think that from the public side, public access is really important. It was great to see in the New London Maritimes write up, you know, them breaking down what it was, and knowing that then, you know, as a community, we could also hold them to that, since we're endorsing it as a board. And so it'd be great to be able to say, this is, you know, this is what it's going to look like if the borough has it, so that we know what we're supporting.
Understood.
Are we, okay, a couple things on that, Matt. So number one, the New London Maritime Society has put a proposal together with specifics, which they may not be able to deliver on. We're not sure. Number one. Right. Number two, I don't know what Mr. Brainerd is able to share with us. Now, there's a deadline of November 30th, which is 2 days.
Yeah, we're putting our application tomorrow, one way or the other.
Okay.
And I think this board should support an application, and I'll tell you why. We don't know who else is applying out there. It may not be New London Maritime Society. It may not be the Borough of Fenwick. It could be some, you know, nonprofit group that has a billionaire funding behind it. I mean, I'm maybe making stuff up, but we don't know how many other serious applications are going to come in. If there's any way for the town to sway where this lighthouse ends up, I think we should do that. And so, Newt, are you going to be able to? What will you be able to share with us?
Well, so Matt makes a good point, and as do you. I start to stumble of it, but I'm sitting on that knife's edge again. Like, I can say to you, okay, we're gonna tell you I'm gonna have 4 of these tours and 6 of those and 4 of those. But when I go to the homeowners, they may say, I want 4 of these and 2 of these and 9 of these. I just don't know. What I do know is in my discussions with both of them, they are fully wide open to off-season limited tours that have someone with them that takes them in there, and not more than 4 cars and all that stuff. We, as the borough, and hopefully the steward of this lighthouse, take it seriously that we can't just block it off and not let anybody there anymore. So I get that. And we want to make the public access both open and meaningful, you know, in terms of getting someone like Susan's group's help to not just say, hey, I'll go walk around and that great, and I'll get the hell out of here. So there's a process to making it a meaningful tour. But I think it's incumbent upon us to allow public access that doesn't disrupt our community, but as well, you know, makes us good stewards of this, you know, of this public place. I just am loath to actually give numbers here that if I can't deliver, then it looks like I was feeding you guys a bunch of bull that I wasn't. That's what I'm, now, we've had these same kind of conversations, just so you know, with the Gateway Commission, and they were concerned with the exact same thing, putting their name on something and then having us block it off and having no access. And they have put forth between our two groups, a very similar list of asks that we are going to live up to. So I think you could say I'm struggling with it. I just don't want to tell you guys something that I can't deliver. And if that costs us, ability, you guys are going, I get it, but I'd rather not have you give us the endorsement than have me tell you something that I can't definitively give you to the letter of the law.
So, okay, any other comments on this?
I guess with what you're saying, without putting numbers on, are you able to guarantee public access through your confidants? I mean, your.
Well, I will tell you this, if the borough has access, by the very right, there is public access, right? If the borough owns the lighthouse and I have a easement across the two properties, there will be public access. So, because it's public property, I mean, we can manage when people come and go, but that makes it a public property in some ways. I mean, all I can tell you is we are focused on what the Park Service has asked us to do, which is to make the lighthouse itself, preserve, rehabilitate, and make that lighthouse open for public access. And just so you know, I don't think that ever is going to mean actually going up to the top, just so you know.
And so I've been on the property legally and illegally, and it needs a lot of work. I've run out that way, and I shouldn't admit that, but I have the fence. I mean, it gives you an idea. The fence is broken, and it's not a safe site. And I'm sure that there's some drinking going on out there or some stuff going on. I'll just say stuff.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the board where I am at on this, and I've thought about it a lot. I don't think anything we've heard today has been news to us. We know that getting the public out there is going to be difficult. We know that, and we know it because the easement is limited, and it runs over private property. So, and the U.S. The GSA knows that, and they put out an email recently that basically says that. And I don't know if that's going to scare off any other bidders or not. It sounds to me like if the borough it does acquire it, the Maritime Society, in their love of lighthouses, will be very cooperative, and that will be better for everybody because, in theory, the borough will have secured land access, not just boat access. Whereas if the Maritime Society acquires it, I'm concerned about land access. So I don't think it cuts both ways in terms of if the applications are equal. I don't think I support Newt in what you said in terms of not over-promising and under-delivering, and I think that's what you're doing. You're saying I don't want to promise everybody everything and then under-deliver, because you're going to catch a lot of flack for that. And so I appreciate that. I guess my question is, if this lighthouse were in Cornfield Point, which is a municipality, or if it were in Knollwood, or if it were in Fenwood, if it was, these are other, villages, they're not villages, but municipalities, by statute, some of them in the state of Connecticut, what would this board do? We would support our neighbors. That's what I think we would do. If this were in Cornfield Point, I think there's no question that we would feel obligated to support Cornfield Point, our neighbors who live within the town, who pay taxes within the town, and who pay taxes to their own association, similar to Fenwick, which is its own borough, of course. Fenwick pays for police services, they pay for educational services in this town. They pay for roads in this town. I've actually heard the reverse argument that, maybe they pay too much in terms of what they end up getting in return. My personal thought is to support our neighbors, the folks who pay taxes to this town, just like we would support any other entity located within the boundaries of Old Saybrook and in this application. I think that allows better access. Whoever the first selectman is, whoever the superintendent is, whoever the executive director of the Historical Society is in the future, because they will have better access to the borough of Fenwick. And as I indicated earlier, I think the New London Maritime Society is at its core an organization that just loves lighthouses and will seek to partner with the borough of Fenwick in making this lighthouse all it can be. I've said my piece. I think we should, within the next 2 days, this Board of Selectmen should write a letter of support for the borough of Fenwick in their application. That's my 2 cents.
So do we need a motion, Carl, or do you want me to
Yeah,
say?
let's make a motion, then we can discuss it. So it's on the agenda. Let's make a motion to endorse the borough of Fenwick's application to acquire Wood Point Lighthouse.
I'll second that.
All right. Further discussion?
I think the only point that I would add, Carl, I agree with everything that you said, and Newt, I appreciate your answer in terms of the knife's edge that you're on and where you are. I think that for me, a big differentiation between the 2 applications is the availability of capital. The borough of Fenwick, because they have the ability to tax, to do fundraising as well. They have a more steady ability to support the ongoing maintenance and upkeep, right? So the historical preservation piece is, we all own houses and buildings. You have the annual maintenance and then the stuff that you have to do every 5, 8, 10 years. And I think that I see the clearest path there to make sure that this is preserved in perpetuity for the community. As well as all those other, really strong relationship points by, uniting the Historical Society, our school system, the Gateway Commission, and the borough. So,
Thank you.
No, I think it's easy to support the application from really both of you. I think that the New London Maritime Society has done a phenomenal job as well. But I think Susan, you said very effectively that you'll work with these folks who have the access and you're looking for the same thing, which is to preserve that lighthouse and have access to it for those that would benefit from that access. And there can be many people.
Sort of.
So it's been moved and seconded. I appreciate the conversation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Be in touch with me tomorrow afternoon, perhaps. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. I'm gonna move on to a couple other meetings here. So I'm gonna make Matt. I hope you feel better. I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We both. Bye.
Thanks.